I think I just kind of realized what I was away from like my ego of work. Where do I want to be as a mother, and how do I want my children to grow? What do I want them to appreciate? It simplified so much for all of us that you just don't need that much. You know, when you're at home and you're in that fast pace, you do get caught up in like, oh, you know, I need this and I need to do this with work and the kids need this. When you are living in a caravan and you're in the middle of Australia and there's nothing around you, you literally only need good water and food.
Welcome to Imprint, a podcast about creating a home and life you love. I'm Natalie Walton, an interior designer, stylist, and best-selling author focused on an holistic approach to homes. Each week, I'm sharing insights and interviews about the creative process to help you enhance both your interiors and well-being, as well as provide you with the tools and resources to make considered and sustainable choices with all that you create. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Imprint. I'm excited today to share my guest, Amelia Fullarton, who is a photographer known for her beautiful light-filled images. And we got to know each other very well over the past year as we were working on a book together, which is Home by the Sea. And I really enjoyed having an opportunity to hear about how she got into photography and some of the lessons that she's learned on her journey. She also shares about her building project and how she created her home, which was really a beautiful one, and it features in the book, and some of the considerations as to working on a budget and a small space, and gives some really great insights into how you can maximize your money when it does come to building a home from scratch. We talk about, obviously, the book, as well as her journey of traveling around Australia for 10 months with her family. Up until quite recently, she's got 4 daughters and went on the trip of a lifetime. So I hope that you enjoy our conversation. As we were speaking, the battery was running out on her computer, so we had to speed up a little bit at the end, but there's plenty in there to enjoy. So I hope that you enjoy my conversation with Amelia Fullarton. Hello, Amelia. I'm so excited to talk to you. I can't believe that it's probably been over a year since we last had a chat, and that was at the very end of creating our book together. So much has happened since then. But first of all, I would love if you could share with everybody a little bit about your journey into getting into photography, because that's, what so many people know you for. And I know that you didn't start out as a photographer. So can you just share a little bit about your story to getting into photography?
Of course. Yeah. Hello. So basically I had moved to Byron when I was 19. I'd just gone on a big trip overseas with some girlfriends to Europe, and I got back and we lived here. We were living in this new place. We moved up from Sydney, and we decided to kind of stay in Byron and make do. And then we would just, had some kind of average jobs as you do when you leave school. And we, and then I kind of ended up doing a uni degree in social science, and then I fell pregnant with my first daughter. Obviously met my partner before that, and it all just kind of, life was moving quite quickly. And after I had her and I'd finished my uni degree, which was in social science, I just made the decision that I didn't really want to be doing that while she was young. I wanted to be home with her as much as I could. And at that time I was like, you know what, I'll just take some family photos. And and I started taking photos of people's kids and of my kid, of her more, and from there it just kind of evolved, and I started doing wedding photos, and it just naturally progressed. I didn't have any kind of experience in photography as such. I'd done photography when I was in high school, but yeah, it was a whole new world for me, and I just self-taught, and yeah, and it just gradually kind of took off.
Wow. And so, I mean, this is probably a little while back. Can you give us a little bit of context about how long ago that probably was in terms of when you sort of picked up the camera to sort of start, exploring it, I guess?
So my daughter just turned 10, so I was 24 when I had her. Um, so yeah, it was probably around 10 or 9 years ago that I really started taking photos seriously. So um, it's been a 10-year journey of getting to this point where I'm at now.
And imagine like 10 years ago, there probably wasn't so much out there on Google or YouTube or any of those things that, you can teach yourself pretty much anything now. I mean, how did you learn? I mean, was it sort of that you had a little bit of a foundation from having studied it a little bit at school, and then you just kind of explored it manually, literally with the camera? Or yeah, how did you teach yourself?
Yeah, yeah, it was like a few things. So I think I'm a very like visual person naturally, so I kind of see things in pictures, and I've always had a really kind of strong interest in interiors, and like my mind has always worked in a way that I was like looking at things in like picture form, if that makes sense. So I think it progressed for me like quite quickly because I already think I had some kind of an eye, but the actual learning to use a camera, I mean, that's just something that you just slowly can pick up. But I did do like quite early on, I got in touch with a photographer in Sydney called Louisa, and she helped me. I kind of went down, and she was just like a bit of a mentor for me, and she helped me kind of, I went to some shoots with her, and she really guided me through that process of like getting jobs and how to kind of, take on a shoot, which was so helpful. So I think, it's that classic thing of you can learn things through paper, but you're never going to really get it unless you do it with your hands.
No, completely. I mean, this is a lot of people who listen to this podcast, they're considering exploring some kind of side of their creativity, but maybe haven't made that leap yet. And I think that initial stage can often seem a mystery to people. They sort of think, well, I see this person at the finish line or, far into their career, but how do they actually go from, maybe working a regular job or whatever that is, or, even taking time out to have kids? How do then you kind of go on that journey and build up a career? And, that can seem quite mysterious sometimes. So I think it's always good to shine a light
Yeah,
on different people's journeys because it is so often a process. And like you say, reaching out to people and shadowing someone, you can learn so much that way. I think it's such a good way to learn. You can learn, I think, sometimes so much, in one day than, you could spend hours and hours looking at something on the internet.
totally.
So, yeah. And what about like your,
Yeah, I
okay, keep, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I think that it's a massive part of it is that if there was someone listening that was in that stage of what do I do, or do I just go straight to social media and start an account and try and really push that side of it. But I think if you can find someone in your community where you can join up with them and just follow them along or ask, like any kind of that experience is just going to gain you so much more knowledge than anything else, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, completely. And what about, I was going to ask you about your, the way that you use light and in your photography. I think it's, you've got a beautiful use of light. Is that, because you only use natural light, don't you, in your photos
Yeah,
or
like
most of the
and
time?
yeah, like well, yeah, basically entirely. Like unless I'm in a situation where we're in a studio and it's like product or something like that, but I really just try not to do any kind of fashion or product photography. So all of my portrait work and anything that I do with interiors, and obviously with the weddings, it's always natural light.
And I just think that you've got this beautiful way of capturing portraits and the light with people. I mean, what are you looking for when you're trying to take a portrait? You know, that's sometimes something that people struggle with. Like, what are some of the things that you find work really well, particularly getting people to relax as well?
Yeah. I think doing so many of the weddings so early on in my career, like if you speak to a lot of photographers, they're like, I will not shoot weddings. I hate them. So I think for me, because that's what basically I was starting at the beginning of my career. So I learned very early on to move quick. Like I had to make the most of a situation that was in front of me, and whatever the light was doing, I had to make use with that light. Whether it was raining, cloudy, crazy, bright, sharp, like I was put in a situation over and over again at the start of my career where I just had to think on the spot and make do, as well as, like you said, like weddings, it's also so much about making people feel comfortable with you and just getting those moments in between. Like you just don't want people to feel stiff. So as much as the weddings are really hard work and long days and very stressful, I think they taught me a lot early on in my career of how to approach light and people and all of that other stuff that's become so useful later on.
And more recently, you've sort of worked with brands and, done various types of shoots. I think, would you attribute that to kind of getting that type of work through Instagram? Has that been a really important tool for you to kind of become known as a photographer?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think it would have been a lot harder to get to the place that I kind of have got to without social media. But in saying that, I do think that there is still that place for word of mouth. And like, a lot of the jobs that I get throughout the year are through people speaking to each other, which I think is really beautiful. You're not just so heavily relying on this one aspect, because to me, that's really scary. And I can see where businesses are suffering at the moment because they rely so heavily on social media. And I think if you want to have strength in your business, it's important to remember that there's other elements that, you need to take into account.
Yeah, no, completely. I think that's a really good point, actually. So what about, I often ask people about their relationship with, social media and Instagram, because I think it's how so many of us know each other. It's how we kind of make those initial connections. And I know that you have sort of had, as have I, I think most of us sort of have, a mixed kind of relationship with it. Like, what's your approach to how you use it? And I know obviously this past year has been a little bit different because you've been on a trip, which we can talk about a little bit later. But, if we sort of look even before that, how did you use it and what was your approach to Instagram?
For me, with the social media, it's definitely a bit of a funny one. Like if I'm not, if I'm on it too much, I just feel as though it's the worst kind of version of myself. And I find with my personality, I need to definitely tap out lots of times. I can't, even though I know that my business would really benefit from me being like quite active and involved in it, I just find for my own personal life that I prefer to not be too involved in it. And if that means that my business kind of sacrifices a little bit, then so be it, because I just find I'm a better version of myself and a better person and a better mother when I'm not worrying or stressing about anything to do with social media.
Oh, I mean, I can completely relate. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's quite a beast, isn't it? But, I guess if you're getting enough work through other channels or just through the quality of your work, then, maybe you don't need to do that. So, which is a good position to be in.
I think it's a tricky one because you you know, you do need to still be kind of present and in some way engaging with it to obviously get more work. And you can't just, you know, I have had massive breaks from it and even have deleted it before because I've just been like, this is just not what I want. So yeah, it's definitely like a tension there for me with it, but I just have to be aware of it and tap out when I can tell that it's doing more damage than good.
Well, I think that sounds very healthy, so that's good. Now, I have to ask you about your home renovation and the project that you did, which I would love for you to share a little bit about your journey. I think what you created with your home was amazing, and the fact that you also did it on quite a tight budget, and which I think that people often like to hear those stories, and very clever design solutions as well. So can you share a little bit about your home? I mean, it's in the book, and we'll talk about the book a little bit as well. But first of all, I'd love if you could share a little bit about your home and story.
Yeah, so we bought some land like in Ewingsdale like 8 years ago now. And we basically found this block that was 1.5 acres, and it's only 5 minutes from Byron. So we thought we've really got to try and go for this at the time. And it took us down this whole journey of building and being on a very, very tight budget, which was interesting. But we ended up getting a great builder at the time, and we also worked with an architect that was really great with homes, kind of where he built a home for his own family in New Zealand on a very tight budget. So we just didn't want to go down that rabbit hole of, getting an architect that, you just, I think you have to be mindful when you work with an architect of them not being, carried away with the project if the budget is so tight. So I think you really need to find someone like we did, that it's like, these are our restrictions. And with our first place, that's what it was all about. Like, everything in that home was based around how tight our budget was.
And so can you share some of the design solutions that you kind of, either you or he came up with? Yeah,
well, I think the first thing, the number one thing is obviously how big the house is going to be, because if you're working with the builder, they all go off square meterage of their costs, so you initially, if you do want to do a home that's architecturally built and not through a spec home building company, is that you need to be prepared that you're going to have a smaller place. So our first place was 3-bed and 1 bath, and then just 1 big living dining kitchen. And for us, it worked really, really well. And then I think secondly, it's remembering your materials. Like, that's where you're just going to have huge saving. If you can cut back on your material costs, you're just eliminating huge amounts of money there. And as well, I think just the design, like the way that first house of ours was built, was that every window was the same shape and size. So, when you're going and getting your windows put in, it's all just so straightforward and easy. And that place of ours, we was basically finished within 3 months from start to finish. So it was quick and easy.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. We started in September and we moved in the day before Christmas.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, but I think, it can be done like that if you're really clear and, you know that you're happy to stick to keeping it refined, then you can do it, but I think that's where people find it challenging.
And I love, can you share about the sort of the rectangular boxes and how you captured the light?
Yeah, so we were lucky with that block because it was all north facing. So, I mean, light is obviously such an important thing for me. And I think it's so easily missed with people, like from your living perspective, that if you have a house that's got north facing light, like it is just naturally, that house was just so beautiful to live in the winter. We would have sun all day. And then, in the summer, it just stays so cool. It just works so well when a house is designed properly. And I really see this thing in Australia, like of, I think there is this thing where it's like, let's just get a project builder. Let's make it easy. Like, let's have the house that has the rumpus room and the 5 bedrooms. And people are always like, we can't afford to use an architect, and they immediately wipe out that option. But I do think there needs to be a bit more discussion of, you miss out on the parts of living in a really well-designed house when you go and do that. You're living in a house that is not made for the block. It's just already pre-designed. So, yeah, there's a lot of elements that, although the house is simpler, you're missing out on living in a home that's nicer to live in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, completely. I think that's a really good example. And so now you're about to start building another house. Can you just share a little bit about that and what you're thinking? I'd love to hear a little bit about, second time round, what type of home are you thinking about? What are some of the design considerations? Give us the rundown.
So again, we've just done a 10-month trip living in a caravan with our 4 kids. So it's actually a really great time to think about building again, because we feel like after living in this caravan that we don't need anything, which is great. So it's kind of simplified the whole kind of design process again. And yeah, we've basically already kind of designed the whole place, but it's still going to be sitting around that 220 square meters. And then we're just hoping to kind of fit a lot within that space, because now the kids are all starting to get a bit older. So we're doing, the 4 beds, but one of the bedrooms will be like a multi-purpose kind of bunk room, kids room. So as the kids get a bit older, they can kind of use that as a multi-use space, which I think was one thing that we really missed in the last place, is just having like a bit of a rumpus room set up. And yeah, it's just, again, just very minimal, lots of kind of outdoor living, and hopefully just lots of nice materials this time.
And so have you kind of specified it at all, like in terms of, the materials that you will use for the kitchen, and will it be a similar kind of aesthetic, or are you curious to sort of try something a little bit different?
I think it'll still definitely have, there's similarities. We definitely have stuff that we like and don't like, but we were so limited to the budget with the last house that it was very much just like a white box, and this one we're hoping that we can have a bit of movement, that we can do, some nice timber floors and maybe something feature in the ceiling. And just, I would love to be able to do timber windows and doors and just a bit more of a country feel to this one, because it's on more land. So, I'd just like it to have a bit more of a warmer feel. And I think, you tell me, I think you get that from using like materials and texture and a lot of the things that the last place was missing out on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I have to ask you as well, because, I think one of the things that was very noticeable about your last place, and I think just you in general, is that you even discounting the caravan episode, like you live quite simply. You strike me as someone who's doesn't have a lot of clutter, and you don't have lots of stuff. And I know that that's something a lot of people struggle with, but they're striving to simplify. Can you share a little bit about your journey with simplifying, or trying to live with less?
Yeah. I think for me, it's very much like a mental thing. Like, so within my mind, if I have less clutter, I feel like more organized and more in control. It's probably more a control thing, actually. But yeah, it's difficult when you have 4 kids because, like, as you know, there's just always stuff coming into the house, and you do have to be kind of on top of it as to what you're buying, and I'm definitely conscious of it. But yeah, I understand why people would struggle with it though, because it just accumulates quickly, and unless you are quite strict with yourself, you end up having this piles of stuff in the house that you're just like, I don't even know what that is, how long that's been sitting there for, like it takes over quite rapidly. So yeah, you do need to be strict with it, but I'm saying it's still a battle for me with having the kids, and I think if I just lived on my own, I would be completely different. But yeah, no, it's something I've got to stay on top of for sure.
And I'm curious, obviously, having done that caravan trip. Well, first of all, can you sort of share why you decided to do it, and what was that experience like? I mean, obviously, it would be lovely to hear some of the highlights, but also just the kind of the practicality of living in a caravan for that period of time. Like, what did you learn about yourselves, and what did you learn about space, and even just your perhaps yearning to have a home or not? I don't know. What was your take on it?
Oh, so much. Like, it was just a once in a lifetime kind of trip, and we had an absolute ball, but it definitely did come with its challenges. We were lucky that we had quite good weather the whole 10 months that we were away. But yeah, as you can imagine, 6 people living in a 17-foot caravan, like everything has to have a place. And one of the biggest things that I kind of learned being on the road in that confined space was everything was always out on the table. Like, if someone was upset with someone, it's like you had to talk it through, and like any issues that we had as a family before we left, like everything just came out, and it was so healing and good for the kids and for us to just know where we were at. Like, you just don't kind of spend that time with your kids when they're at school, and it just gave us that freedom to be like, where is this person at? My youngest is 2 and my eldest turned 10, and it's like, it just allowed us as a family to grow so much stronger and become a more stronger unit, as well as kind of appreciating how nature can be so healing. And so, like, if you needed space or if you needed time, you just had to get outside. You had to go for a swim. You had to go for a walk. And like, I've never felt more connected to nature, and it was just such a beautiful kind of experience to have with the kids while they were young. And, being in a house at home, you just can't kind of have that connection to nature like you do when you're traveling around Australia in a caravan. You're literally outside 90% of the day. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, oh gosh. I mean, I think it's like one of those wish list things for a lot of people, and to have that opportunity to do it, sounds amazing. And like you say, I'm sure there were also many challenges along the way. What did you learn about yourself during that time as well? Like, did you kind of get any insights into, what is a priority for you, or even maybe in relation to your work, or, what you want to do, or did you get kind of any big insights in that way?
Yeah. Like, I think, there was a lot that kind of came out for all of us as to where we want to be. And like you said, I feel so fortunate to have had that experience. Like, it really is once in a lifetime. And I mean, we worked really hard to kind of get to that place that we could go and just take that 10 months off work and just enjoy being with our kids. So I feel fortunate to actually have that space to, like, say, what is it that we're needing right now? But yeah, I think I just kind of realized what I was away from, like, my ego of work. And, it's like where do I want to be as a mother, and how do I want my children to grow? What do I want them to appreciate? Like, it simplified so much for all of us that you just don't need that much. And like, you know, when you're at home and you're in that fast pace, like you do get caught up in like, oh, you know, I need this and I need to do this with work and the kids need this. And like, when you are living in a caravan and you're in the middle of Australia and there's nothing around you, you literally only need good water and food, you know, and petrol. And
I was going to say fuel.
it's so much more simpler. Like, we would stress about things like whether the car would be okay in these places that were so remote, and we'd stress about like whether we could get good water and, you know, stuff that you just don't think about at home, and it just makes you appreciate what you have so much more.
And so I'm curious as well. I mean, you know, I know of a few people who've done either sort of trips around the world or also around Australia. And at the end of the trip, they've actually ended up deciding to relocate somewhere else. Now, you have bought some land in the Byron area, and I'm curious, you know, was there any kind of thought that you might, you know, were you interested in settling anywhere else, or what was the pull to come back to Byron?
We did actually think about kind of resettling somewhere else. We were looking down the south coast. We've got some friends that live around the Tathra area, and we even really love it around Jindabyne. Like, we spent 2 weeks there, and it's just so beautiful in the summer. But then we also both love like our snowboards, and I love skiing, and it's got such a beautiful horse community. And, you know, we were thinking of kind of down in that area, but we just couldn't find land that we were looking for. And at that time, everything was still so expensive, and land kind of came up in a suburb in Byron that we really love, and we thought, you know what, we need to just go for something. And I guess this is just another stepping stone. And you know, it's not that we don't want to be here by any means. It's just that I feel like we're quite open people, where you know, we were up for a move if the right kind of land came available. So, but yeah, we're more than happy to be building again here.
Yeah, well, I certainly look forward to seeing what you create. And so now I have to obviously ask you about the book. And now I think you only just received it, maybe even today. So can you share a little bit about what, you know, the experience was like for you of working on a book? This is your first book, and I know it's a very special thing to work on your first book. And yeah, what you think of the book now? I mean, I haven't even had a chance to ask you, so it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, no, I was so happy to be involved, and the fact that you asked me was just so lovely, and I was so excited about the whole process, and seeing it today was like a sigh of relief. and you know, it was great to see how it all come together, and I felt it was just really, really lovely to be able to do something like that. And I never kind of really imagined that I would get that opportunity. So thank you for allowing me that.
Oh, complete pleasure. I mean, it was so much fun to work on. What was your perspective of, like, you know, we went into so many different homes, and what were some of the kind of takeaways that you got from those kind of, I don't know, however many months we ended up doing it over, but, you know, going into, in the end, it was like, well, 18 homes in total, including our own. But, you know, what were some of the takeaways you got?
Yeah, I think it's just such a cool experience to be able to go into other people's homes and see how they live. Like, I loved that there's just so many different types of homes and people within the book, and like you would agree, it's just such a great thing to be able to kind of be welcomed into someone else's home, and like how that experience kind of unfolds is just so interesting and special, and to be able to do that for work was so cool. But yeah, I guess I just loved that. I took away from it that, you know, we got to see how so many different people live and what they call home.
Yeah, no, great. Now, I know your battery's running low, so I'm going to ask you some little questions and we'll see how we go with time. These are ones that I often ask at the end of the podcast. So what's the best life or career lesson you've learned?
I think just what I touched on before, that get out there, go and speak to people and get experience.
What's been your best decision?
Oh, having my beautiful girls.
Who inspires you?
God. From a work perspective or just from a life?
Any.
It's so hard just to say one person. I'll have to come back to that.
That's okay. What are you passionate about?
Being there for my girls, being present.
What dream do you still want to fulfill?
Another book of my own, maybe.
What are you reading?
I'm reading Lucy by the Sea at the moment.
Okay. I know you always have good books on your book stand.
Yeah, it's really good, actually.
Okay, good. Are you listening to any podcasts at the moment?
No, I have been terrible with podcasts lately. Too much in and out of reception on the trip.
Yeah. And finally, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Well, I went to see a fortune teller when I was like 19 and she told me to be more like a dolphin.
Interesting.
Which I always remember that. So I think she meant that I needed to be more playful and less serious and less hard on myself and just, relax more.
And do you think you did? Or have?
I think I've gotten worse as I've gotten older, to be honest. I used to be way more fun.
I think that about myself too, actually.
Yeah, no, I was really, really fun from like 16 to 23, and then I got too serious too quick, I think.
That sounds a little bit like me too. we lived a lot of life in a very short period.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, I won't keep you any longer because I know that your battery is running very low. But thank you so much for your time. It's been so much fun to speak to you and learn a bit more about your journey. And thank you for your beautiful images in the book. And I can't wait to catch up with you properly soon.
I know, and thank you for having me involved in the project. I'm just so happy to be a part of it.
All good. All right, thank you.
Bye.
All of the links and info for this episode are at nataliewalton.com/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can get a direct download of the latest episode. And I really appreciate when you take a minute to rate and review, as well as share the love with someone you know who might benefit from this episode, or on social media. If you'd like to access a range of free resources, come visit my website, nataliewalton.com. Thank you to Jaeger Media for producing this podcast. And I would also like to acknowledge the people of the Bundjalung Nation where it was recorded, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I look forward to connecting again soon. I'm Natalie Walton, and you've been listening to Imprint.